Been quite a week, hasn't it? Stuff just keeps happening. So we have this little 5-year-old boy that was taken and detained with his father in a facility in Texas. I spoke with a woman this last week, a Hispanic woman. She's not leaving her home. Doesn't matter if she's documented or not. She's not leaving her home because she's afraid to do so. And what's really hard is she's like the Betty of her church. Like, people would call her to get rides, and she was doing a lot, and she can't do that. She can't do the thing. She's like, I don't know what to do, because her life was to be useful to people, and she can't. And it's just really hard for her. She hates being afraid, and then she hates not being able to give and help her community. I've talked to many people who are people of color, meaning maybe they're black or they're Hispanic or something else, and they're all carrying copies of their legal documents with them all the time, just in case they get stopped. And that even the legal documents may be taken away from them and torn up, that's happened a few times. Just like, who cares? And then on our Bloomington Facebook page, there was this post this week. This person writes, "Brokenhearted doesn't even begin to express how I'm feeling right now. For the first time in my life, I feel so helpless. My husband and I had been traveling in and out of the country since 2008 because he had a seasonal work visa. Well, when we learned we had 2 grandkids being born back to back, we decided to finally take the step to change that. Little did we know that the new administration was going to put a halt on a lot of people's process mid to late last year, after investing almost $30,000 in the process. And even though our attorney was able to obtain an extension on our process, my husband was detained. He's never had any kind of record that would have automatically revoked his visa. We both contribute to the communities, not only in our neighborhood, but my kids' neighborhood as well. He was detained Saturday, a week ago, while replacing a battery to a car, regardless of the fact that we carried proof of everything. Sunday noon, he was already in El Paso, in a place where there's been deaths reported. We haven't been able to hear from him in that detention center. They have everybody coming out of Minnesota blocked. My daughters are scared to send my grandkids to school because of their skin color. Living this just feels like we're trapped in the Anne Frank diaries. It's sad that people would think this is actually okay. We've never come here illegally and never arrived on boats. I can go to sleep crying for all, waking up praying and thanking God for another day to live so we can make a change. Prayers to everyone." Are we hearing this? I hope we are. I've been having a lot of meetings and conversation with clergy and community activists about all that's going on and all that they're seeing. And there's been a lot of work of what we can do. There's Minnesota-based companies like Home Depot, Target, Enterprise, and Delta that have been completely silent about what's going on in their communities that made them who they are. And they have actually been complicit, making deals with the federal government to make money off of what's happening here. And so clergy have been going to these headquarters, peacefully singing and praying and asking to meet with the CEOs. And unfortunately, one of the things I learned was that Delta, a Minnesota-based company with the biggest presence in our Minnesota airport, has been silent and complicit as people who work in the airport. So do you know how much security you have to go on a plane, right? You realize that you have to have gone through all the security checks to work at an airport, right? So people legally working in the airport, they're letting ICE roam through and take people in the middle of their shifts and put them on airplanes that very day. And they want to get them out of Minnesota where they can get them to a place where there's less legal protection. This is awful. But this is why I joined 100 clergy on Friday morning and went to MSP, and we knelt and prayed until we were arrested. Because We wanted the nation to see that clergy are not okay. And these were Buddhists, and these were Jews, and they were Christians, and they were all these different ages, people in their 70s and 60s, wanting people to know that we are not being quiet and we're not okay with what's happening. And then, of course, that afternoon there were 50,000, is that the estimated number? And it's minus 17, folks. That's amazing. That 50,000 people, and behind every person that peacefully marched, there were so many people who were unable to come for very many reasons, medical, work-related. That is the beauty. The beauty is all of these people that came peacefully in support of a change, of something else, of the ways we're taking care of each other. So it was really, really then frustrating that yesterday we had more bad news. That Alex Jeffrey Preddy, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, was again murdered trying to help a woman who was thrown down by agents, and he was only holding his phone with his hands raised. And this is where we're getting more lies from the administration, again, always trying to make anyone who is saying or standing against what's happening in any way that they're the problem. I hope you're seeing the lies for what they are. I hope you're seeing this. So violence being done by these federal agents is called not violence. This is just law and order. And peaceful action is being called violence and terrorism. It's a complete gaslighting of what's happening. What you're seeing and hearing isn't true. We're going to tell you what to see, hear, and believe. And that is very overwhelming. There was a pastor who wrote yesterday, "Today I was really hoping to relax a bit after an intense week of organizing the clergy call in Minnesota's Day of Truth and Freedom on Friday. Instead, I spent my afternoon in the streets as a movement chaplain, providing spiritual, emotional, and physical care to protesters and mourning at the site of Alex Preddy's murder by a Border Patrol agent. We arrived soon after ICE had left and local enforcement had backed off, leaving the area to the protest. Tear gas still wafted faintly in the air, but the threat was currently gone. What did I see at this protest once they were no longer being attacked or impeded by cops and agents? Yes, an angry community that really, really wants ICE to stop attacking our neighbors, but also a community that started immediately caring for each other on another sub-zero day amidst some very raw emotions. Restaurants and churches open their doors and supplies to feed people, warm people, and offer a safe place for medics and clergy to care for people. Kind people walking around offering cookies, samosas, granola bars, fruit snacks, water, whatever they can to nourish others. Tons of neighbors walking around with piles of hand warmers, making sure everyone is safe in the cold. People dedicated to helping others, showing up in their practice roles, chaplains, medics, legal observers, runners, and more. A free table was set out so people could share supplies with each other. A memorial was already built around the spot where Alex died, circled by people praying and grieving. So many people checking on the well-being of folks they didn't know and thanking each other for being there. One man just needed a hug and a good cry with one of our chaplains because it was all so overwhelming. Dozens of prayer and grief vigils are planned across the city tonight. This was not a riot. It was not out of control. It was not dangerous. The danger left when ICE left. The danger left when ICE left. No, friends, this was a holy site, a thin place, a place where people were trying to love their neighbor, shout against injustice, and use their words and very bodies to not only pray, long for, and demand a better world, but to start making that world a reality, one caring interaction and cry and samosa at a time. My opinion is that there is an old world that is dying, and dying as violently as possible. And here's my opinion, watching and listening to so many people over the years. We think that the way history has been for the last couple thousand years is the norm, it's all we can ever do as humans, and it's all that's ever been, and I disagree. I think we've lived in a period of time in which the story was written by people who said, no, this is what's normal. War, kings, generals, genocide, brutality, oppression, racism, white supremacy, misogyny. It's just the way we are. Just accept it. I disagree. I believe this is a taught mentality that came from somewhere, I don't need to know where, and that there is another way to be. That this old world in which people think they can invade other countries, this old world in which people think that it's normalizing sending people out to brutalize people, this old world in which you're valued somehow, it doesn't matter if you're treated well because you don't have the right documentation, because of the color of your skin. This way of thinking where we dismiss things and we accept things that are just unconscionable. This world must die. And I see in the interaction between Jesus and Nicodemus, I see that Jesus is trying to represent and show a new world, a new way of living together, one that is aligned with the will of God. And no, that doesn't instantly make you a perfect person, but one in which you're invited into a deep healing within, in which you get rid of your own sense of violence, you get rid of your own sense of hatred and fear and anger, and you learn how to really embody deeply peace, hope, love at a fundamental level, and how that changes the way you behave in the world. And it isn't just Jesus who embodied that. There have been saints and mystics all around the world in Christian and non-Christian spaces who have and do at this moment embody that. So it is possible. There are people, way showers, who are showing a new way to live on this planet. They see differently. They don't look at other people and put them in the categories in the same way. They know how to stand together, how to use their courage and their compassion to stand in solidarity. I believe that is what Jesus was talking about. That's what the kingdom of heaven is. It is within us, waiting to be unearthed. And when we embody the kingdom of heaven and other people start to embody the kingdom, it grows and it spreads. And imagine if that was normal. What is happening on our planet, what makes the news, is literal insanity. It is not our home. It is not where we belong. I don't want to be a part of it at all. Jesus talks to Nicodemus and says, God so loved everyone and everything that Jesus came, that he came, and he uses this image, this really weird kind of obscure image of just as Moses lifted up the serpent. And we read this story last fall where, if you remember, Moses and the people are walking in the wilderness and the people are complaining. They're like, Moses, why did you bring us out of slavery into this place? The food is bad. You know, we're constantly moving. We don't like it. It was better back in Egypt. They wouldn't have said that before, but sometimes the prison you know is better than that which you do not know. It was like there was venom in the people. It was like their own fear and their own ingratitude was poisoning them. And lo and behold, these poisonous snakes start to come out and bite them. It's like this big metaphor, right? And then the people start dying. They cry out to Moses. Moses cries out to God, and God says, okay, hold up a bronze serpent, and whoever looks at it, whoever trusts enough to look at it will be cured. And it's such a deeply symbolic thing because it's the image of the very thing that's killing them. They have to look at the image of the very thing killing them in order to be healed. Which means for you and me that when we look at these stories that break our heart, the old world goes, oh, those evil enemies, we hate them. Bah. In the new world, can we look at the people that we disagree with, the people that are doing violence, and go, where is that in me? What mirror is being shown up to me What ways can I get rid of any violence and hatred within me? And how can I live a new way? A new way is waiting to be birthed, and it's one that comes right here from the heart. It's one that is filled with so much compassion, it's willing to embrace far more than we can ever imagine. That's why one of my favorite lines from the Bible is when Jesus is on the cross and he looks at the people who are jeering at him and laughing at him and making fun of him, and he goes, "Father, forgive them. They just have no idea what's going on. They're just stuck. They're trapped in this old view of us and them and enemy, and it's all just lies. Forgive them for being trapped in this." We cannot heal what we're not willing to see. But this new world that Jesus brings in, as I said, we've had glimpses of it. We have moments, I think, when each of you have experienced it in your own life. Moments of courage and compassion and wisdom that's been so beautiful. On Friday morning, when I was on my knees praying with these other clergy, it was actually very beautiful. All of this, there was like 1,000 people who were on the sidewalks, and they were singing with us, they were praying with us, they were chanting with us, and they were shouting out encouragement. It was very beautiful. We all wanted the same thing. We want mercy, peace, and justice to overwhelm our communities and our state and our country and our world. I think what Jesus is saying when he talks about a rebirth is he's saying, look, when you were first born, Nicodemus, you came out in this world that told you stories of fear, shame, guilt, and judgment, and you thought that was reality. That's the way it is. But you must be reborn. You must be reborn into God's reality. And that's a rewiring of your brain, and it is a melting of your heart in such an utterly profound way. It's not just a good idea. It is a complete and utter radical internal shift so that the way you see the world is altered completely. To me, that is amazing. There's this beautiful story, and I can't remember where it comes from, but there was a general back in like 1,000 years ago, and he had his whole army. And they were just sweeping across, as one does, because that's just what you did, right? That's the story. Let's conquer, let's kill. And they were going up to a monastery, and the monks were all told to flee for their life, because they were just going to attack and kill everyone. And this big general comes in, and there's a monk sitting there. And the general comes in and he goes, "Don't you know who I am? Don't you know that I could kill you and not even think anything of it?" And the monk said, "Do you know who I am? You could kill me and I wouldn't think anything of it." And in that moment, the general realized he had no power over this man. This man was not afraid. This man was not submit. He was uncontrollable, and he dropped his sword and he left. There's a beautiful story like that with St. Clare of Assisi. I don't know if you remember from this summer in our Holy Disruptors series, but there were these invading armies, once again, all these invading armies that doing their dangerous thing, coming up to the convent, and surely all the nuns were terrified. And Clare says, "Give me the chalice." She grabs the chalice, and she walks out in front of the army. And I can just imagine the look in her eye was like, "Yeah, boys, I'm not afraid of you." And apparently, as the story goes, there was this like light that burst from the chalice, and they just got scared, and they all left, and they told the story. And the general was like, "You're kidding me? Wait, you're telling me a nun came out with a cup and you ran away? Go back." So they went back. Claire's like, "Give me the chalice." She did it again. She just walked out there and she held up the chalice and the bread, and there was just this power to her that she was no longer afraid because she was so transformed from the inside out of what was sure and what was true. When Jesus in this passage talking to Nicodemus says, those who believe in the Son of Man, here's what he's saying. He's not saying that he wants you to agree with the fact that he died on the cross, right? If I come up to you and I say, tell me that I'm 100% Norwegian or I'm going to punch you in the stomach, you'd be like, man, you're crazy. What's the point? God doesn't want an agreement with you about things that happened 2,000 years ago. That's not what belief is. That's not what Christianity is. It's more like this. We're all in a burning building, and a firefighter runs in and says, hey, y'all, I know the way out. If you trust me, follow me. Imagine if we all went, oh, great firefighter, we love you, and we just stayed in the burning sanctuary. Is that faith? Is that what the firefighter wants? Doesn't make sense, does it? Actual Christian faith, what Jesus was calling us, was to move away from an old world that is dying and burning and to follow him out into freedom in a new way. But it involves trusting him enough to get up and physically move our bodies to a place we do not know. We do not know where we're going, but we trust that he is taking us there. And what if church was a place where we constantly tried to practice together deeper compassion, praying for our enemies, rewiring our brain, rewiring our hearts, one day at a time, slowly, so that we stop being a part of the old world with its manipulation and its lies and its oppression and its just exhausting way of being. And instead embodied a whole new way of being together. What if that's what church was always supposed to be? May that be the truth for us. May we come together and support one another in such a way that we feel ourselves shifting more and more toward love. For God so loved this planet that always seems to be on fire, that God sent Jesus, who knows the way out, and says, trust me, believe in me enough to walk with me out of this into a new way of being and living together. May we do so together. Amen.